Hey everyone, welcome back to Blurred Lines, Crime, Conspiracy, and the Truth Behind the Gossip. So today is a bonus episode for you guys because you know what? I can. And this is actually a case that I've covered before, actually a couple of times. Once on my YouTube channel, I did a very brief introduction, and then I did have another podcast, Unwell, with Ashley Ray, which I had to discontinue after some time, and it wasn't the direction I wanted it to go in, and I decided a couple years later to have this podcast, Blurred Lines, and it just makes more sense for me now. I wanted to give you guys this because you guys didn't get a deep dive last week, and I was just really busy. I have a lot of personal stuff going on right now, but I thought that since I had actually found all the documents and stuff that I had gotten together for the case, I had did really good research on it, and actually I was looking at my stuff and I'm like, I gotta get back into this research. So I researched this case. I watched hours of trials, of news recordings, of so much stuff that had happened. I live near the area that this happened in. It's very tragic, and we're gonna get into it today. Before we get into it, I just want to say a few things. Now, first of all, I have a fish tank in the room where I record this. So if you guys ever hear like water or anything, I know I need a better mic, but I work with what I have for right now. So I apologize. I usually fill it up beforehand, but since this is a bonus episode, I want to get it done so I can get it edited and get it out to you guys as soon as possible, so we can also do our episode for tomorrow, which is our updates episode, and I do have a deep dive for you on Friday as well. I apologize for that ahead of time. Another thing is, I just want you to be fair warned. This is extremely disturbing case, and it involves child death, mutilation, drug use, violence, and rape. So I just want to warn you guys, it may be disturbing to some people. So if you guys can't handle any of that, especially to do with children, I recommend you maybe skip this one. But it's a case that I think the main reason I want to give it to you guys is because it's a case that I think can influence a lot of cases to come. This young girl was not put in a situation because she was forced to. She was not put in a situation because, of circumstances and stuff like that. She was put in a situation because of the dating choices of her mother. And when I started reading this, and I'm gonna kind of give you guys some commentary in between, so this may be a longer episode. I'm warning you of that as well right now. While I was rereading this, just to make sure that I had everything correct, and I didn't want it to like overstep what my last podcast did, and vice versa. But I was reading it, and I think there's actually a couple of people that people may have just forgotten about because people were already sentenced or already got plea deals in regards to what was going on with this case. So I'll go over that a little bit at the end. I don't really want to, I broke this down into sections, so it's kind of easier to digest. The main portion of this is going to be the first intro part of it. Kind of gives you a little bit of a background to fully understand who this little girl is. So we're just going to get to it, guys, so I can get this out there and get it to you. But this is the horrific murder of Victoria Martens. On August 23rd, 2016, Victoria woke up on a Tuesday, a school day for her. Her and her mother, Michelle Martens, had woke up that morning and made cupcakes for her classmates at school. And she was so excited about her party the next day, her mom was planning for her at a nearby park. Walking to the bus stop that morning, it's eerie to think that she did not know what horrors she would have later that evening. I want everyone to know the genuine sparkle that Victoria held because so many people loved her energy and her smile. She helped neighbors when they were hurt. One neighbor remembers when she had surgery on her leg, Victoria would go and help her walk her dogs and help her carry groceries and just whatever she needed. She loved animals, and she had also gotten a kitten herself, and she was so excited about it. Victoria was getting into makeup like any other little girls her age, and she also has a little brother as well. And she loved playing with him outside on scooters along with neighborhood children within the apartment complex she lived in. She had many friends, kids, and some adults that were neighbors. She loved to talk to everyone. By all accounts, Victoria's mother was a great mother, and she took care of her kids and was always taking them to do things and was always outside with them when they played outside, and even took them to the apartment pool during the summertime. She was friends with people that lived near her, and they stated they never seen her use drugs or even drink. During the winter before, she was working 2 jobs for the holidays to provide for her kids. She had a lot of help from her parents with the kids as well, and they would often pick them up from the bus stop and babysit them whenever Michelle would ask. She was now working at a local grocery store near her home. Michelle did not have a shortage of boyfriends. We hear from a neighbor that she was dating someone who lived within the apartment complex. This is how she knew Michelle. They ended up breaking up that same year. She had a previous boyfriend, David, and he had moved in with her shortly after meeting. Michelle called CPS on this boyfriend, and she stated that her boyfriend was trying to kiss her daughter, and this was never looked into by CPS. There was also 4 more calls to CPS by Michelle. She was trying to get help to get this man out of her house, because she had an issue telling people what to do, as she was a people pleaser. One day she did kick him out and he left, and she never spoke to David again. In July, she started dating a man that she met on a dating site, Plenty of Fish, named Fabian. And shortly after connecting, they met each other, and within that week, Fabian was moving in with Michelle and her 2 kids. She stated that she is the one that invited him to live with her. She stated he was a good guy and her kids got along with him, and he would do things around the house without her asking, and she liked that. Fabian was in and out of jail, and he had recently been in jail for violent charges. The judge that was on his last case had recommended he stay in jail, as it was likely for him to reoffend again, yet he was still released. When he met Michelle, he did not have a job and he did not have a consistent place he was living. He also had many family members that were criminals, as well as drug dealers and just all around bad people. He heard of his cousin getting out of jail and did not hesitate to contact her and offer her a place to stay. Jessica Kelly was Fabian's cousin, who had just got out of jail on also a violent charge. She told Fabian she did not have a place to stay because her mom's house was too small. Let's get to know her a little bit more here. Jessica is also a criminal with a background in violent incidents, and seemed by hearing from people that met her, she was very rude and did not look very friendly to most people. She also had a background of drug use along with Fabian. So that's kind of an introduction for you guys of the people in this case. So these are the people in this case, with the main one being Victoria Martens, who is the victim. I guess you can also say her brother was a victim. However, her brother was never named, and we're not going to go into that. And her mother's brand new spanking boyfriend, and also new boyfriend's cousin, Jessica Kelly. You'll learn to hate her. You will, trust me. It was interesting to me when I reread this because, as you'll find out with autopsy reports, there was unknown DNA that was found on Victoria's body. Not to get too ahead of myself here. And I don't think this is something I went over, because in reading this, I don't go over it. But it would be interesting to know, since this David person was associated with Victoria and her mother, it would be interesting to know if his DNA was the one found. I'm sure the agents looked into that, but it would be interesting to know that, because I forgot about that completely. I think even when I was doing this case before, I forgot about it. I'm going to break this down into 5 key dates that are important and important events that happened. And like I said, I'm going to be adding stuff throughout this whole episode that you may have not heard before, even if you listened to an episode or went on my YouTube and listened to that, okay? So we're gonna start this on August 20th. Jessica had not seen Fabian since they lived with their grandmother growing up. Fabian offered Jessica to live with Michelle for $50 a week. So he's just offering it up as free game, like it's his house. This was something that was later found out that Michelle was unaware of. She was asked if she could stay with them as she did not have a place to go, and Michelle sympathized with that and agreed she could stay, but just for a week. On August 20th, Fabian picked up Jessica from a football game she was attending for her son. She stated he was with a man that seemed he was on heroin and was just very fidgety, she stated. At this time, they had Jessica's son with them. Also, they went to the grocery store to get food as they were planning on barbecuing at Michelle's and having a sleepover with the kids. They then went to Michelle's apartment and Fabian let the unknown man use the bathroom at the apartment. Michelle was at work at the time and she was unaware of anyone in her home. Jessica then recalled they took him to a local casino. It is also known during this time that Fabian was trying to break into cars in the area. After this, they went to pick up Jessica's daughter and headed back to the apartment to cook. When they arrived back at the apartment, Jessica and Fabian cooked and Jessica played with her kids. Michelle did not return home that night till around 9 to 10 p.m., so Michelle is not around. Fabian got her from work. They then went home and she by herself picked up the kids from her parents. Michelle did not want her parents knowing about Fabian as she had not long ago out of a relationship. Also, the fact that he was living there as well. This evening, Jessica had also moved her stuff to the apartment as well. She's living there. What Michelle thought was that she was living there rent-free, but she was actually paying Fabian money under the table for that. The next day on August 21st, Michelle drove Jessica and her kids to meet with Jessica's friend Willie at a local gas station. She was with her family for most of the day. She is invited to a barbecue at her cousin's home, so she takes her kids back to their father and heads to the barbecue at her cousin's home. It was known to Jessica as well as the people at the barbecue that Fabian was not allowed to attend. Jessica had told Fabian to go by anyways. When Fabian arrived, their cousin was very upset he was there, and she then punched him, giving him a black eye. She was also pregnant, and later Fabian stated that the only reason he did not beat her up was because he would never hit a pregnant woman. Weird. This altercation gets Fabian very upset, and he then calls his brothers, who are said to be in a local gang. These calls happen all through the night, calling one of his brothers more than 18 times that night. He was also texting his cousin that hit him as well, threatening her and trying to scare her. They go back and forth till the late evening. Jessica also reaches out to him during this time, and he ignores her. During this evening, Fabian searches for guns from Michelle's phone as well as his. Fabian was upset about the situation and told Jessica she could not sleep at the apartment this night. So Jessica went home with a friend and texted someone that was to meet her for a drug exchange. From there on, on that night of the 21st, she basically just stays up all night. It seems like she doesn't even sleep at all. And I just want to also preface this before going into the next day. I did all of this research based off of the trial of Jessica Kelly, because there was a trial against her. Fabian, I'll let you guys know later too, but Fabian and Michelle Martens actually got a plea deal in this and got charges dropped for this case for Jessica Kelly. So I just wanted to let you guys know that in case you guys are like, well, why are you focusing on Jessica Kelly so much? Like, what's going on? And you'll find out soon. On the morning of August 22nd, which was a Monday, Jessica got a hold of Fabian and he agreed to go pick her up. Michelle and Fabian picked her up that early afternoon. They went to their uncle's and made a few stops and headed back to Michelle's apartment. At the apartment, they hung out and smoked weed and drank. Later in the day, they got meth, and Jessica and Fabian were also doing this in the master bathroom. During the rest of the late afternoon and evening, after Victoria got home from school, they were driving and went numerous places throughout the city. They did not arrive back to the apartment until 3 a.m. Michelle later stated this was like an adventure, and normally Victoria was in bed by 8:30 on school nights, which this was, and this showed that this was extremely out of character for not only Victoria but Michelle as well. This is further evidence that proved that Fabian was manipulating Michelle and she was doing whatever he wanted. Again, it goes back that she's a people pleaser. During the visit to Fabian and Jessica's uncle and also brothers, Michelle stated her and Victoria would stay in the car and were never allowed to go into those homes. homes. Michelle did not know about meth being done in her home. She may have known, but did not say anything. As I stated before, again, she is a people pleaser. Fabian and Jessica were up all night this day, and Jessica never went to sleep at all for 2 days. This was now the second day that she's up all day. So 2 days. Fabian then joined Michelle in the room at some point. So that was August 22nd, and we are going to go into August 23rd. So I want you guys to kind of see the manipulation in where this is starting. You hear in the beginning how neighbors that lived around her and that talked to her and that some were considered friends of Michelle said that she never even drank. They never even seen her drink, much less do any kind of drugs or anything like that. So you see the manipulation happening. Now, if she did any or not, I guess that's kind of up for debate. If she did, it's not up for debate that she was kind of forced or manipulated into it, or even given it outside of her free will. You know what I mean? So that's like a huge thing to remember with this, but I'm not trying to defend her in any way. I'm just trying to keep that open line of remember that this is out there. This is something that is out of the ordinary for this single mom and her children. On the morning around 6 a.m. on August 23rd, Jessica wakes up Fabian and tells him she's tweaking and needs to talk to him. So if you guys don't know what tweaking is, it's basically like when you're really high off a drug like heroin or meth, you basically start thinking a lot and you start like getting paranoid and you start thinking of irrational things, or like irrational, like people are watching you or listening to you and stuff like that. Michelle at this time was already awake and was making cupcakes with Victoria as it was her birthday on this day, and the little girl was too excited to make cupcakes with her mom and give them to her friends. So excited. Sorry about that, guys. Meanwhile, in Michelle's bedroom, Fabian and Jessica were talking. Jessica stated that she was writing in a book and she had about learning about how to connect with God. These writings in the book were in evidence and shows very disturbing writings, some that did not even make sense, showing that Jessica was indeed under the influence and paranoid from the drugs she was doing. They continued to use meth during the morning time despite feeling paranoid. After Victoria went to school, Fabian and Michelle do not return home for a while, and Jessica is in the apartment alone. During this time, Michelle texts a neighbor telling her to keep an eye on her house and to knock on the door and pretend to be her aunt just to make sure everything is good. Jessica calls her mom and asks her to pick her up. However, Fabian would not give her the address because he did not want anyone knowing where he was living at. She tries to find a ride to her mother's but never does. She admits to her mom she was messed up and she did drugs. Jessica was very paranoid and she was not talking like herself, saying that the TV was talking to her and it was God telling her to do things. She was paranoid that Fabian, her cousin, was setting her up because he kept coming and going all day, she stated, and did not know what he was doing. During his trial, we hear a jail phone call from Jessica's sister to Jessica that at this time she was saying how she is worried about her ex coming to kill her, and she talks about the TV talking to her and talks about people setting her up. You can tell she is not in her right mind. So during the trial, they did do a lot of jailhouse phone calls, and they also did they pulled phone recordings from phones and stuff like that, and she's basically saying how there was testimony of friends and cousins saying that that was not normally her, which I can completely understand, but at the same time, it's like you literally did those drugs and you continue doing them out of your own free will. Nobody drugged you to do that. You know what I mean? So the same day, the 23rd, during the time Victoria was to get off of school and head home from the bus, Michelle would not make it home in time. So she sent a text to Jessica reminding her to pick up Victoria from the bus stop. She texts her a few times with no response. Michelle then texts her mom and asks her if she can go for Victoria, but then sends another a few seconds later and says never mind. This is said because she did not want her mother going to the apartment and not knowing where Jessica was because she was not answering. Michelle stated at the time her and Fabian were at his uncle's home and he did not see the hurry in leaving. Michelle tried to get a hold of her neighbor, however the message does not send. She then receives a call from another neighbor saying that Victoria was by the office of the apartment complex and did not have a key. She asked if the neighbor can keep her and she would be home soon. Then by this time she tells Michelle that someone was home and Victoria went home. Michelle stated then they finally left Fabian's uncle's home. Fabian started driving erratically and she was very scared at this time. So think of it this way. So this girl, Jessica Kelly, Fabian's cousin that he hasn't seen in a while, she just got out of prison on drug charges. You're calling this woman to pick up your daughter, your almost 10-year-old daughter, from the bus stop or be at the house and be there so she can be there. You're telling her to babysit her. She just got out of jail on violent charges. Met her the night before. Victoria doesn't even know who the hell she is, in all honesty, okay? Like this if this doesn't show you manipulation and the fact that before she was always there for her kids and did everything she needed to do and was doing all of the mom stuff and doing the hard stuff, and then all of a sudden her boyfriend just doesn't want to leave his uncle's and she's just not going to pick up her daughter. That's manipulation at its finest. I'm telling you right now, for sure. When Fabian and Michelle got home, they went into the apartment to find Victoria on the balcony doing homework, and Jessica was getting ready in the bathroom. During this time, Victoria started talking to Jessica, telling her it's her birthday, and told her she's having a party tomorrow. Jessica then gave her $45 and told her happy birthday. Fabian then came in, and he claims Jessica asked for the money back, and Victoria said she thought it was for her birthday, and Fabian then steps in, kicks Jessica out of the bathroom and gives Victoria $10 and came and took her to the gas station. He bought some alcohol and Victoria got a soda. When they got back home, Fabian and Michelle then leave again to get Jessica cigarettes. At this time, neighbors were outside as it was a warm day and people were barbecuing and the kids were playing, so there was plenty of people by the apartment at this time. Jessica stated she was never told to watch Victoria at all. Michelle comes back with the cigarettes and goes upstairs to give them to Jessica, and then Jessica gets upset with her and Fabian as the cigarettes were not the correct ones. They then leave again, leaving Jessica with Victoria alone for the third time. During this time that Victoria is outside, she is riding her scooter with her friends and talking to the adults and inviting people to her birthday party. That was set to take place the next day at a local park not far from her home. And since it was a short day that day at school, this was why this was planned for the day after her birthday. Victoria was talking to her next door neighbor when Jessica comes out of the apartment and stands behind Victoria and starts answering questions the neighbor was asking for Victoria. The neighbor stated it was very weird, and Jessica seemed very weird, like a bodyguard or something. Jessica then pulls at Victoria's arm to go inside, and the neighbor stated it was very weird, and Jessica just looked at her with a weird face but complied and went inside with Jessica. So this is the start of where we kind of see Jessica get a little bit aggressive towards Victoria. Like she said, like it was in the beginning, she claims on trial, on the stand, under oath, that she was not told to watch Victoria, yet she's acting like she's watching her, or protecting her, or being aggressive towards her. At this time, Michelle and Fabian were still not home, and even though we don't have the truth from Victoria's killer, we know who did this in the end. So keep in mind, nobody's ever admitted to doing any of this. This is just the evidence that was given. Jessica stated that while her and Victoria were inside, an unknown man walked into the apartment. He was dressed very well and had a Mexican accent, but was not Mexican. She stated that he asked where Fabo was, which was a nickname for Fabian, whatever you want to call him. And Jessica tells him he was not there, just her and the girl, and gestures towards Victoria's room where the little girl was watching TV. She stated he then goes into Victoria's room and she goes outside to smoke a cigarette. When the man comes out, he tells her, "You have a mess to clean up in there." And Jessica claims he threatened her and that it was not cleaned up. He would come back for her and her kids, and Fabian is paying for what he did. This unknown man was never seen by any neighbors and no suspicious cars that whole day by all people that were in the area. Jessica said when she went into the room, Victoria was on her back on the floor by her TV and she was blue, she stated. Her time of death was from 7 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. on the evening of her 10th birthday, August 23rd, 2016. Again, this has always been a claim of Jessica that there was an unknown man, and for whatever reason, while that unknown man was there, went into a 10-year-old little girl's room. You don't question it. I know you're high on drugs, but still, you don't question it. Then, as a way to avoid it, you then go outside to smoke a cigarette, and then she's gone. Doesn't add up because, of course, if her lips were blue, that would have meant that she would have been dead for quite a minute, even if it was like strangulation that did it. So that was always concerning to me, that she was like, oh yeah, her lips were blue, and she was by her TV. But she waited for Michelle and Fabian to arrive home, and when she heard the radio outside, she looked and saw them coming to the parking lot. She then grabbed Victoria's body and put a blanket over her and carried her outside to the car. Michelle and Fabian are in the car listening to music and singing and ignore Jessica. She then goes back in the apartment with Victoria and puts her on her back in her room. So picture this. Blanket grabs the 10-year-old girl, runs down a couple flights of stairs because they're on the top floor, and basically is like standing outside holding this 10-year-old little girl, screaming at her mom and Fabian, and they're ignoring her singing and dancing in the car. First of all, wouldn't you like knock on the window or like open the door, or like why would you just stand there? Just regardless of the drugs that were being taken that night, it doesn't make sense. Second of all, Michelle, being the mother she is, without the influence of what it was, I believe would have been very concerned. But it also could have been hard to see because from what I understand, it most likely would have been closer to obviously the evening time. Michelle stated that she thought that she was just showing them Victoria was asleep. She was only able to see Victoria's hair and did not notice anything weird about this at the time. When they go up to the apartment, Michelle got in her bedroom and Jessica pulls Fabian to the side. She then tells him about the man. He claims he told her she was tripping and went about his evening. Michelle made dinner that evening, and it is said she was kept from the room and guest bathroom while this all took place, but she claims she was not aware anything was even wrong at the time other than feeling uncomfortable because Jessica was acting weird and Fabian was really distant. Getting into this, I just want to give you another warning of graphic content coming up. So if you guys want to go past this, go right ahead, totally up to you. During the time of all of this, Jessica tells of Fabian cutting off Victoria's arms and helping him clean up blood. However, Michelle states she fell asleep on his lap that night and would have noticed if he was to get up or even would have been doing anything because it was a very small apartment. Jessica says when she came back from getting more things to clean up, he was cutting into her chest and he was taking her heart out. She then stopped him and took control of the situation. Jessica said she cleaned the blood as best as she could and wrapped Victoria's body in the trash bags under her, as well as wrapped her in a sheet and carried her to the bathroom. She claims she also redressed her, but her PJs were never found. She also claimed she was in her PJs already before she went into her bedroom, but again, they were never found. During all of this, she was high on meth and was still tweaking and paranoid and started gathering her things. So again, she was still under the influence of drugs during this time, and basically she's claiming she took control of this when Michelle actually claims that Fabian really didn't have anything to do with the situation because she's basically, but again, I can see that as like people pleasing thing. You know what I mean? I can definitely see that. The neighbors do not claim to hear anything till around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. the following morning of August 24th, 2016. Jessica states she knew before she put Victoria's body in the bathtub that she was going to kill Michelle and Fabian because she knew she would go down for the murder, as she stated as well. She then goes into Michelle's bedroom where Fabian and Michelle are sleeping and gets their phones off the nightstands and puts them in her bag by the couch. Then goes back in and wakes up Michelle and asks her if she believed in God and hits her in the forehead with a clothes iron. Yeah, an iron. Michelle then becomes disoriented and Jessica hits her again in the back of the head. Fabian wakes up and tries to stop her and gets hit as well. So this is Jessica Kelly doing this. Jessica continues to try and fight Michelle, throwing her and pulling her hair. Fabian gets a hold of the iron and throws it off the balcony, trying to help Michelle, and gets hit again and then runs out of the apartment. Michelle was set on getting Victoria and getting out of the apartment. She knew something had to be wrong because she was yelling for Victoria and she was not responding. She locks herself in Victoria's room and had planned to go out the window with her. She looked everywhere in the room and never found Victoria, and she opened the door and asked Jessica, "Where the fuck is my daughter?" She does not answer but continues to beat her up. Then when she gets outside, she pulls the door to shut and slams Jessica's hand in the door. And while she was doing that, she tells her daughter is dead. Then Michelle ran to find Fabian. She finds him at another building asking for help from a neighbor to call the cops. Michelle was dazed and had very blurry vision. During this time, she was bleeding from her head, sitting outside an apartment that was calling the cops for them. One of the neighbors tried to ask her where her kids were, and she did not answer, just stared. Michelle stated she did not remember what happened. Once police arrived, smoke detectors started going off. In the apartment, Jessica got her stuff together and then went into the apartment and lit the sheet on fire that Victoria was wrapped in, and then answered the door and saw it was a cop and jumped off the balcony. She came walking around the building and she was apprehended by the cops, at this time saying she didn't do it and being very combative. Michelle was taken to the hospital for the gash on her face from getting hit with the iron, and Fabian was assessed and did not need medical attention. Jessica was also taken to the hospital as she had fractured her leg when she jumped off the balcony. So she was trying to get away from him and she ended up jumping off the balcony. So this is a part to remember, is like Jessica tells Michelle, like, your daughter is dead. She is no longer alive. Like, that's what happened, you know? And then obviously in this situation, you can blame drugs. You can. But at the same time, when somebody has a violent past and they're willing and able to do this, you should always pay attention to that. And that's not protecting your children if you're allowing them around people that have had prior charges for violent crimes and have served a substantial amount of time in doing those. You know what I mean? So it just astounds me, and you'll find out what happens here shortly, so let's get back to it. During this time of the morning of August 24th, 2016, detectives were on the scene talking to neighbors and also the suspects to find out what happened. Also, a lot of things that have came out in the period, and Jessica and Fabian and Michelle had to be placed in protective custody while investigating everything. In the trial, we hear more about what happened inside apartment 808. Please be aware the next few minutes will be very graphic and disturbing, so again, just a fair warning to you. During Fabian's trial, we hear from the first responders that arrived on scene and learned of a little girl that could need immediate help. They described going into the apartment that had blood from Michelle and Jessica's fight and also was in disarray. They enter the bathroom, and in the tub they see Victoria's body, and the paramedics check for a pulse. They do not find one. She explains that Victoria was already cold. She tries to put leads on the little girl's heart and could not find her chest. In that place was a plastic bag holding in her organs, and down by her leg it looked like her legs tried to also get cut off, stated it was black by her groin area. At this time, the paramedics needed some air and exited the bathroom. She came out and told her boss that the little girl did not have arms, and she explains that for a long time her mind put her arms there still. Very sad testimony. The crime scene was processed with the detectives there and did not seem to be many issues with the first investigation investigation. However, Victoria's grandparents filed a lawsuit against the local police department and CYFD Child Services. They stated that during the collection of evidence, things were misplaced and never found some things. The next year, in 2017, a new investigation was launched to see what they can find about who committed this murder. A lot of the charges were dropped as there was no evidence of two things. The murder was not committed by Michelle or Fabian, as they were not at the apartment at the time of death. The rape charges were dropped from Jessica and Fabian, as there was not evidence to prove they ever did that either. So the evidence in those, charging for like the rape and the murder were dropped against her mother and Fabian because it was evident by their cell phone data, especially, they were not in the area during that time. All three of the people surrounding this horrible crime are still in jail and will remain for the following. Fabian Gonzalez was sentenced to 37.5 years. He can get parole after half sentence is served. This was for child abuse and 7 counts of conspiracy to murder. His lawyers requested he be put into protective custody. The judge stated, "If it were not for Mr. Gonzalez, there is no doubt in my mind Victoria would still be alive." I completely agree. Michelle Martens pleaded guilty in 2018 and was sentenced to 12 years with 2,270 days served. So she had 6 years to serve in 2018, and she was to get credit as well for good time and could be cut in half. So that would have been in 2024. I'm going to have to look that up and see if she's been released. Okay, so I actually did look it up and it looks like she has time served. So it was 6 years. So it was a 12-year sentence and they updated it back in 2022. 12-year sentence, the judge ordered Michelle to continue her rehabilitation, continue with therapy. Once released, she will also be ordered to serve her supervised probation period. So that's really all that's like on it. There's nothing more on it. That was like the last time. So she was sentenced to 12 years, but it was my understanding that the 2,270 days served meant that it was a 6-year period in 2018. I could be wrong and she could only have the 12 years, but either way, there is something that she's going to be able to get out within a living period, but she is going to have probation and all of that stuff. So Jessica Kelly, in 2019, before the trial of her cousin, took a plea as well and got 50 years with 6 years served. So she has 44 years. Then when she's released, she is to serve 6 years of probation. So she's basically serving a 44-year sentence. And I'm here to tell you she's not having a very, very good time at all. There's been incidents where I have heard that she has been beaten many times. She's not having a fun time in there. And I've heard the same with like Michelle and Fabian too. And they've requested to be in protective custody. And I don't know if that was given. But now this case affected everyone that was involved and so many more in the city. Victoria's birthday is celebrated every year at a local park called Mariposa Basin Park, where she was supposed to have her birthday party that Wednesday, August 24th. And I'm going to try to get down to that park within the next few weeks, and I'm going to add some pictures and maybe do like a video over on my YouTube channel about it. But I kind of wanted to also break down a little bit for you guys what the timeline was for autopsies and stuff like that, what this looked like back in 2016 to 2022 when Jessica Kelly was finally sentenced. So November of 2016, autopsy was released. They did find the cause of death, which was strangulation. There were no drugs or alcohol found in her system, and that's where they found the time of death between 7 p.m. and 8:45 p.m. that evening. They did also find a STD related virus within Victoria's body, so they also believe that she may at some certain point had been raped at some time. So they're not too sure about any of that. That was never proven from anybody that was involved in the trials and stuff. Again, it would be interesting to know if they looked looked into that first boyfriend, David, that lived in the apartment complex. I don't know if they did or not, but definitely somebody I think they could have looked into. In January of 2017, APD opened a new investigation for the murder of Victoria Martens, and separate trials are requested by the defendants. In May of 2017, Fabian received calls from jail from his mother, and he tells her he had nothing to do with it. July of 2017, Jessica also had calls pulled from jail and was telling her friends she was not involved and she did nothing wrong. August of 2017, Victoria's grandparents file a wrongful death lawsuit. They claimed in this lawsuit that APD and CYFD did not act. November of 2017, phone records of the suspects were released. Both were on their phone all night and day of the murder and show evidence they were planning on getting rid of evidence of the crime. And that was on Fabian and Jessica's phone. The phone records were really interesting in this case because it showed like where their movements were throughout the city. Fabian and Michelle were actually pretty far from Michelle's apartment complex that night. November 23rd of 2017, DNA was sent to Florida to be tested by a new technology called STR Mix. June of 2018, Michelle Martens accepts the plea deal. Her rape and murder charges are dropped. These are also dropped for Fabian Gonzalez as well. Neither were present for the plea deal announcement. Possible fourth suspects' DNA was found on Victoria's body, on her back and fingernails, as well as on her neck. A psychiatrist that spoke with Michelle stated she was very vulnerable and a people pleaser and believed she had nothing to do with Victoria's murder. September of 2018, the judge rejects Jessica's plea to drop murder charges. She claims an unknown man came in the home and did that to Victoria, and she admitted she was high on meth that night. Didn't change anything though. You still mutilated the girl. Like, if somebody else killed her, why not just call the cops? Why? Because you're scared to go back on your parole? That don't make sense. Sorry, but don't. January of 2019, plea deal with Jessica is reached. No contest, 50 years in prison, and she agrees to testify against her cousin Fabian. Information on the night of the murder of Jessica hit Michelle in the face with an iron and then set Victoria's body on fire before trying to flee the scene. On March 28th of 2022, Jessica Kelly was charged 50 years in prison with time served of 6 years, so she will be behind bars for 44 years. On July of 2022, the trial of Fabian Gonzalez started. Basically, that's where I got all of my information. It started it was supposed to start July of 2022, but COVID basically prolonged it. So it started September of 2023. So there was a dates with COVID that happened within there. But yeah, so this is the horrific murder of Victoria Martens. I think it's a good case to look at because her mom was still held accountable for the actions and the people she put in that home around her children. And I know a lot of people might say, oh, well, what happened with her brother? So her brother wasn't there a lot of the time. Her brother, from my understanding, was with the grandparents for a lot of the time that this took place. But it's not ever really said that if he was in the home when this took place or not. So they kind of try to keep that shielded. The brother is okay. The brother is still alive and is with the grandparents. To my understanding, from what I understand, is the grandmother has custody and the grandparents actually did win their case because, see, when people went in to investigate this and the people actually were looking at all of the evidence when it first took place, they overlooked a lot of stuff as far as like blood and different evidence, and they couldn't ever go back on that and re-find all of that information. Essentially, they did lose a lot of evidence that could have been used in this case against the defendants. So they had to go back in and re-investigate everything. This apartment was under APD's control for a very long time, and actually during the trial, they did take the jurors out to the apartment so they can fully understand how small the apartment actually was. So it's crazy. Again, I'm gonna try to get down to that park because I'm within a close enough proximity to make a little trip to get down to the Mariposa Basin Park. They have a really nice memorial, and I haven't visited in a very long time. I used to live a lot closer to there. I would actually walk that park often. I haven't visited her in a while, so go visit her memorial. I think that it's nice to do things like that and to remember these people. And I think it's a good case to look at because also the judge brings to present that, you know, it was Fabian's fault. It was Michelle's fault. Those people are to blame because this Victoria Martens was only 10 years old. She had just turned 10 years old. She was 9. If it wasn't for the boyfriend that she met on Plenty of Fish and moved in a month after she met him, if it wasn't for that boyfriend having so many criminal family members and just inviting them in the home like nothing, it would have never happened. That's on her mom's conscience. That's on the boyfriend's conscience. And that's on the conscience of somebody that was on drugs. Now wants to blame all of this on drugs. But at the end of the day, you are the one wielding the power to do all of that. In my opinion, I think if Jessica Kelly ever gets out, or even if Fabian ever gets out, those people will reoffend. I think Michelle needs to be in intensive therapy. She doesn't need to be in a relationship. She needs to be watched, possibly even mental facility, because in the beginning, she wasn't all there to begin with. And then once she started adding drugs into the mix, that just changed everything for everyone. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. I'll leave a lot of resources in the show notes down below if anybody is dealing with any kind of domestic violence or needs any assistance with any kind of rape crisis. I'm going to put all that information below. Yeah. And I'm going to leave a link of a picture of Victoria Martens because she was a beautiful little girl that didn't deserve anything that she got. I think it's an important story for people to hear. And it's awareness for not only drug abuse, but also for personality disorders, for awareness, for protecting our children. That's really what it comes down to is as adults, as parents, that's what we should be doing is protecting our children, protecting them from people that have unseen agendas for them or for us. And that's our job. And if we fail at doing that, and one moment, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, this woman was in their house for 3 days and she was trusting her to watch her children. No, we're not going to do that no more, guys. No. Just no. Be sure you guys are subscribed. Tomorrow I'm going to be dropping our updates podcast where we update you on all things in the true crime, conspiracy theory, and gossip world. And then on Friday I'm going to bring you a new deep dive episode. It's going to be a surprise. I'm not going to tell you guys what it is, but if you know, you're lucky because you were in my live this morning. That's the only people I've told so far. So be sure to subscribe, guys. If you guys are if you guys are listening to this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, share, do all the fun things. I truly do appreciate it. But till next time, guys, we'll talk about it. Bye.